welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the main card for UFC 305, Du Plessis versus Adesanya. I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. I'm very excited to do this video. And before I start talking about the main card for UFC 305, I just want to say, look, yesterday we found out that Tracy will be retiring from making MMA content, and I feel like I kind of have to give my respects in some ways because Tracy was actually the guy that inspired me to make my own channel. You know, I had been watching MMA for quite a while before making my channel as well. And I don't know, I was kind of nervous about doing it. I was like, man, I don't know. And, seeing him, start his channel. And actually, the first channel that I watched from Tracy was actually called the MMA Dynasty, with one of his friends, I believe. And they would talk about MMA. They would go back and forth on certain fights. And even though there was a lot of takes that I kind of disagree with Tracy, I really appreciated how he viewed fights, how he talked about fights. He's a very, very good speaker. And I like his channel. I think he's a very entertaining guy. I think he's a very funny guy. I mean, he's made so many good memes, good lines, meaty hooks, pitter patter shots, low kicks. And Tracy is truly, I believe, one of the best, if not the best, MMA content creator. I just think he appeals more to my type of, I guess, sensibilities when it comes to MMA content. MMA Guru is also the top dog, but like I said, it is very sad that Tracy is retiring from MMA content, but I don't really blame him. I see a lot of people saying that he's making a stupid decision, but we don't really know what's going on in his own personal life. And I think that the guy is clearly, very much into fitness. And I believe that whatever the guy decides to do next, he's going to be very successful. I mean, he had a great work ethic in MMA YouTube, and that's why he was able to get far. He just passed 100,000 subscribers. So, like I said, it is very sad news for the MMA community. I think Tracy was a big part of that. I also appreciated that he was one of those MMA content creators that would invite people on, just anyone could hop on and debate like a topic. Like I thought that was such a good thing that he was able to do, which I don't think any other YouTube creator really does that. They just bring random ass people and they could join a Zoom call to debate MMA, MMA stuff. I just, I really appreciate that he did that. So, like I said, guys, I had to, just talk about it a little bit. Tracy retired. I wish him the best on his future endeavors. So let's get started with this card. Let's see. So I'm gonna start off with the main card only, and the reason why I'm only doing the main card, guys, is just because I don't want to do a 30 to 40 minute prediction video or a breakdown. I will be posting my full card picks on Saturday morning, but the reason why I'm not necessarily doing a full card video is just because I don't like to do 40 to 50 minute videos over the whole card. I actually don't watch those videos myself. I think that if you're somebody that likes to bet on fights, then I do feel like you should watch those type of videos. They give you really good insight, the betting breakdowns. But I'm not a bettor, guys. So when I break down these fights, you have to take into consideration that I'm making predictions, not betting actual money. I think that is a little bit different. When people bet money on fights, I do think they're a little bit more, I don't want to say fence sitting, but obviously, they're risk adverse, which I understand, right? But when I'm making predictions, I'm not like I said, I'm not a guy that's necessarily betting money on fights. So I want you guys to take that into consideration. So the first fight on the main card, we got Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. And Jingliang, he's kind of a fan favorite, right? We were all waiting for him to wear his suit at the press conference of Nate Diaz versus Hamza Chimaev, or Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson, which was a terrible card. And Jingliang, guys, he hasn't fought in 2 years. And his last fight, he lost a split decision against Daniel Rodriguez in a fight that I thought was very competitive, but I had Jingliang winning by a decision. It was very unfortunate that the decision did not go his way. And Jingliang is a guy that has good boxing. He's very hard to take down, even though Hamza Chimaev was able to take him down. But, I mean, Hamza Chimaev is a monster when it comes to the grappling. Jingliang, he's very dangerous in the pocket, throws really good hooks, has the power to knock you out, really good low kicks. He's a very, very dangerous fighter. And then Carlos Prates, on the other hand, he's kind of a long, rangy striker that has a lot of power, uh, crazy power. In fact, I mean, I was just thinking about his last knockout against Trevin Giles. No, that was not his last knockout. His last knockout was a knee to the suplex, which was nasty, man. This guy has insane power. He has one shot knockout power in the welterweight division. He's very long. He's very rangy. And his fight before that against Trevin Giles, he was kind of getting pieced up with low kicks in that first round. And, he wasn't really able to get his rhythm. He was getting hit clean. And in that second round, he was able to knock out Trevin Giles with a straight left hand or a left hook, if I am not mistaken. So this guy has crazy power. This should be a banger of a fight. This should be a very, very fun fight. And as much as I like Jingliang, I'm going to go with Carlos Prates to win this fight. I want to say TKO knockout. The only reason why I'm not confident saying that is because Jingliang is not a fighter that has ever been finished on the feet. He's lost decisions. He's been submitted by guys like Hamza Shemaev and I think other guys in his career as well. But Carlos Prates, he has been knocked out. He does seem a little bit hittable. The problem here is that we don't know how Jingliang is gonna look not fighting for 2 years. Like we don't really know how he's gonna look going into this fight. He did have an injury. He was recovering from that. He's been very inactive. Carlos Prates, he's on a really good win streak right now. He has momentum on his side. He fought recently. I'm gonna go with Carlos Prates. I wanna say TKO, like I said. I'm gonna go with TKO. Even though Jingliang is not a guy that necessarily gets finished. I think the layoff, I think Carlos's power, I think that even if he's losing, he's able to find the shot. I'm going to go with him to win by a TKO. The next fight we have is Tuivasa versus Rozenstruik. The heavyweights, right? I'm a big fan of Tuivasa, guys. I like the guy. I think he's a very, very fun heavyweight. When he was on his run, it was incredible. Even when he lost against Ciryl Gane, I mean, he put a pretty good fight where he almost knocked out Ciryl Gane. So Tuivasa is a very fun fighter. The problem with Tuivasa is that he's coming off a lot of losses. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. And even though you can argue that Tuivasa, even though he's on a losing streak, he's not losing to just your typical heavyweights. Like he's losing, okay, maybe Tybura, right? He got submitted. Volkov, great heavyweight, top 5 heavyweight. Sergey Pavlovich, top 5 heavyweight as well. Ciryl Gane, top 5 heavyweight. He beat Derek Lewis. He beat Sakai. So, he's beaten all those kind of like, mid-tier heavyweights in the division. But, he's lost to the top heavyweight. So it's not really like a big it's not really like a really bad thing in my opinion, right? Like he's only losing, but the problem is not only that he's losing, but he's looking really bad in those performances. The thing here, Rozenstruik, he has good power. I think he's a middle of the road heavyweight. He's coming off that win over Shamil Gaziev, where he was able to beat Shamil Gaziev. He lost to Almeida, TKO Chris Dawkins, which is not a big accomplishment. He lost to Volkov. He's lost to Blaze. He beat Sakai. So when you look at the type of opponents that both of these guys are beating, it's basically the same caliber of opponents. You know what I'm saying? So I think that I'm going to go with Rozenstruik to win this fight by a TKO. He does have power on the feet. But I do think Tuivasa can win this fight. The problem is that I just think he's looked so bad in his last couple of fights that he's one of those fighters that I'm not going to pick for them to win unless they're fighting like a really bad heavyweight until they show me something different. You know what I'm saying? And Tuivasa, I think he's more than capable of beating somebody like Rozenstruik. The problem is that, like I said, he doesn't have momentum. He's coming off, taking a lot of damage. He's taking a lot of damage. I think his last 2 losses, he lost by submission, but he just hasn't looked all that great on the feet. Rozenstruik at least is coming off a good performance against Shamil Gaziev. He has a little bit more momentum on his side. But I definitely think it's a very winnable fight for Tuivasa. But like I said, I'm still going to go with Rozenstruik to win this fight. Probably by a TKO, maybe decision. If it's a TKO, I could see it happening maybe in the first or second round. But I'm going to go with Rozenstruik. Like I said, I want to pick Tuivasa because I think this is the type of opponent that he can beat. Like I said, Tuivasa isn't just losing to any type of heavyweight. He's losing to guys like Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov. These are really, really good heavyweights, and I think Rozenstruik is more of middle of the road, and I don't know. I could see Tuivasa winning this fight, but I'm gonna go with Jorginho Rozenstruik to win by TKO. Now moving on, we got Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. And when this fight first got announced, I was kind of like, man, Dan Hooker could win this fight. And then I went back to rewatch some of his fights, his fight against Jalen Turner, his fight against Claudio Puelles, and then I think his fight before that was against Arnold Allen when he tried to move down to the featherweight division, which did not go too well. I mean, it's a big weight cut. And I think that Mateusz Gamrot is going to beat Dan Hooker by decision. Look, Dan Hooker is a really good kickboxer. He's very good from range, very long striker. He does have a bit of pop in his shots. He's not necessarily like one punch knockout power, but he can definitely hurt you. The problem that I have here picking Dan Hooker to win this fight is that Dan Hooker, I've noticed that he's not a guy that's walking forward and imposing his will. He's kind of a very reactionary fighter, and I just don't think he has the power, in my opinion, to really finish someone like Gamrot. Because if Gamrot was gonna get finished by somebody, at least recently, it would have been by somebody like Jalen Turner, in my opinion. Because I think Jalen Turner has more one-punch knockout power than Mateusz Gamrot. I do think Dan Hooker should have better takedown defense than Jalen Turner. But the problem here is that even if Dan Hooker, stuffs a couple takedowns, I just think Gamrot is going to be so consistent and persistent with those takedowns, just level changing, just keeping level changing, just spamming takedowns. It's probably going to be one of those fights where Dan Hooker is going to be incredibly frustrated. And I think Gamrot's just going to win. And also, I think Gamrot is a little bit underrated on the feet. I think a lot of people say like he's kind of like really sucks on the feet. I don't really think so. I don't think he has the best durability. He's been dropped a lot in his last couple of fights. And, Dan Hooker could knock him out. There's always that chance. But I'm going to go with Gamrot to win by a decision. I just think the grappling, the wrestling is going to be too big of a threat. I saw Dan Hooker against Claudio Puelles. He didn't look all that great in that fight. His last fight against Jalen Turner, it was a very competitive fight. In the first round, he was getting pieced up by Jalen Turner. And then he was able to outgrid, out-cardio Jalen Turner in that fight. And then before that, he had lost to Arnold Allen by TKO in the first round in the featherweight division. So I don't think, even though Dan Hooker won his last fight, he's taken a lot of damage. I don't think he's in his prime. And I think Mateusz Gamrot has a little bit more momentum on his side. And I still think that the wrestling is going to give him issues. And if there's ever going to be a guy that knocks out Mateusz Gamrot, I just don't think it's going to be Dan Hooker, guys. So I'm going to go with Gamrot to win by a decision. Hopefully, I'm going fast. Kai France versus Steve Erceg. This is a very interesting fight. Kai France, great striker, small, explosive for the flyweight division. Steve Erceg, long, rangy, good boxing, good footwork, good fight IQ. Even though I don't know about the fight, actually, he has okay fight IQ. He shouldn't have shot that takedown in the 5th round against Alexander Pantoja, and he would have been the champion of the flyweight division. And you could still make the argument that Steve Erceg probably should have won his last fight. I did pick him to beat Alexander Pantoja. I was like, man, this guy's really good on the feet. He has good takedown defense. He has good awareness on the ground. I think this guy is truly the real deal. He should have been champion, man. I'm kind of pissed about that now that I think about it. But here in this matchup, I think Steve Erceg is going to win, guys. Kai France, also long layoff. Maybe that helps him. Very explosive, great striker, good low kicks, good boxing. Pressure fighter. Steve Erceg, patient. Is more like he's patient. He fights from range. He has good counters, good left hook, good straight right hands. And I think Steve Erceg is gonna win. I think he could even go to his grappling. I don't really see this fight really going to the ground, but I think there's a fighter here that's going to take it to the ground. It's probably going to be Steve Erceg. And I just think he's the better striker. I think he's the faster striker. Actually, I don't know if he's the faster. Maybe Kai France is a little bit faster, but I think he will do good enough on the feet to be able to beat Kai France. And I think he can take this fight down to the mat. I think the first round could be a little bit tricky. Even though Kai France doesn't necessarily have bad cardio, I think Steve Erceg, could throw body kicks, can try to expose. We've seen Kai France get finished by Brandon Moreno with body kicks. So I gotta go with Steve Erceg. I could see this fight being competitive. I could see this fight being one of those fights where we all pick Steve Erceg, And then the fight is actually pretty competitive. Like Francis does pretty well, but I still see him losing by a decision here. Now, moving on to the main event, I've already talked so much about this fight, and I've gotten a lot of crazy comments. Some people are mad, some people agree with my take on this fight, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Uh, I'm not a fence-sitter. I'm not a guy that's not gonna speak with conviction. Obviously, I am aware that it is a fight and anything could really happen. So don't take it up the ass, right? I'm gonna speak with conviction. I'm gonna speak with what I believe is gonna happen. And the reason why I made that video is because I felt like a lot of people were miscategorizing Dricus du Plessis as some brawler, as some guy that's not like sloppy on the feet, that's not technical, that doesn't find ways to win. And they were like trying to make Israel Adesanya seem like he was some fucking knockout artist, when we've seen more often than not that Israel Adesanya is not a knockout artist. He's not a knockout artist. Yeah, he could show up with Gyno. He does have power. He's fast. He has quick counters. Good low kicks. Fights good from range. And I do think he could give problems to Dricus du Plessis. If Dricus du Plessis doesn't have a good game plan going into this fight, it could be a hard time for Dricus du Plessis. But I do believe that Dricus is the more well-rounded fighter. I think he has the grappling in his back pocket. I think he's good enough on the feet to even give problems to Israel Adesanya. I think his biggest hurdle here is going to be early on, where Adesanya's quick, where he's fast, where he's going to be at his most confident. I think that as the fight goes on and Israel Adesanya sees that he can't really knock this guy out, I think that's where Dricus can start to take over. Because we've seen in Dricus' fights, guys, he doesn't have like the most clean performances. Against Darren Till, he had a very dominant first round. The second round, he started to get pieced up by Darren Till and then won the third round by submission. His fight against Sean Strickland, he was having a hard time in those first couple rounds with the jab. He wasn't able to hit Sean Strickland clean. He wasn't able to control Sean Strickland for a big portion of those rounds. But what did we see Dricus do? He kept pushing forward. He kept the pace. He kept shooting takedowns. He's starting to land his blitz as the fight went on against Sean Strickland. And even though I don't necessarily think that that's the same strategy that he's going to have to use against Adesanya, it just shows you that this is a guy that finds ways to win. Even in his fight against Robert Whittaker, he didn't fight Robert Whittaker the same way he fought Sean Strickland. If you rewatch that fight against Robert Whittaker, Dricus had a high guard. Like, even when he landed that jab that dropped Robert Whittaker in that second round, Dricus still had his guard up, and he was like, "Oh shit, let me go try to finish this guy now." He was very defensive in that fight. So I think a lot of people just think that Dricus is just gonna approach this fight the same way he has in his other fights. And even though, like, I do believe that even though Dricus hasn't been dropped or knocked out, I don't think he's ever faced someone with the power, with the counter ability of an Israel Adesanya. I will admit that 100%. There's a chance here that Adesanya knocks him out. But like I said, I think Dricus is durable. He has good game plans. He has good fight IQ. He's awkward on the feet. He's powerful on the feet. If he has Adesanya up against the fence, it could get bad for Adesanya. And I think Dricus is going to have a high guard. I think he's going to be measured. I think he's going to fight to a game plan. And I think that Adesanya has been inconsistent, guys. One fight, he's the best fighter in the world. Knockout power. The next fight, he goes on to cruise mode and has a lackluster fight against Jared Cannonier. A very competitive fight. Close, boring-ass fight against Robert Whittaker in the rematch. And then the next fight, he has a good fight against Alex Pereira. So Adesanya is one of those guys that you just don't know how he's going to show up going into this fight. That is why this fight is so close. And like I said in my breakdown, I'm not shitting on anyone for picking Israel Adesanya to win this fight. I'm shitting on the arguments and the reasoning. I think it's a little bit foolish. I think it's like dumb. I don't think people are making good arguments because people are talking about this guy like he's some knockout artist. Like, Dricus is just some brawler. And even though Dricus, sometimes he does overextend with right overhands, I think he's very good at game planning. I think the wrestling, the top pressure could give Israel Adesanya problems. A lot of people say Dricus is just another Marvin Vettori. Fuck no, bro. Dricus is not another Marvin Vettori or Paulo Costa in the slightest. I mean, we just saw Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa and how competitive that fight was, which it wasn't. And then we saw DDP versus Sean Strickland. And that shows you that Dricus is truly the real deal. He's big. He's better at fighting than someone like Paulo Costa. I think he's better at fighting than Marvin Vettori. Obviously, I think Marvin Vettori probably has the durability, but I think Dricus is way better than those guys. And I just think that just because he looks like those guys, he has the type of body as those guys, people just say, oh, he's another Paulo Costa or he's another Marvin Vettori, which he's fucking not, guys. He's fucking not. You could look at common opponents, and even though people say MMA math, the only way you could really see how a fighter does is by looking at their common opponents. That's the way you like do it. Does that tell you everything? No, because every fighter has a different style, but it does tell you something about their level of skill and how elite they are in the division. And I think Dricus du Plessis is a way better fighter than Marvin Vettori. Way better on the feet. Way better grappler, better top pressure. Better submission ability than Paulo Costa. I think Dricus du Plessis is willing to take more risk. I think Paulo Costa was a little bit scared. I think he respected Israel Adesanya way too much on the feet and was just basically staying in range for Israel Adesanya to pick him apart. I don't think Dricus is going to do that in this fight, guys. So I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win. Probably decision. I could see him winning by submission. I could see him winning by TKO, just by ground and pound. But I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win by a decision. Competitive fight, like I said, Adesanya is dangerous. Good counter striker, coming in with a chip on his shoulder, coming in with Gyno. But I'm still going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight. I think he's the younger fighter, the more well-rounded fighter. He has the grappling. He's good on the feet. He's technical, very good at adjusting mid-fight. So I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.